Ultimately, you have to look at what's been the most consistent product of what we've seen this season. And the most consistent number I can give you is 4 wins and 8 losses.
Back to reality we go. The Bulldogs, after a win last week against the Melbourne Storm's reserve grade side and Jerome Hughes, unfortunately could not back it up with 2 successive wins against the West Tigers and have reverted back to their losing ways in a narrow loss. It has to be said, 22-16. Look, the Bulldogs tried really hard, no doubt about that, and I'm not going to fault their effort, but ultimately, this group of players are not good enough. This Frankenstein of a squad has been mutated to fail, and unfortunately it means that the Bulldogs' top 8 hopes are just about dead. Mathematically, still possible. We would only be allowed 3 more losses for the rest of the season, but hey, maths is maths. In saying that, let's be real, the top 8's gone. Where we go into next week. The game in itself, the Bulldogs had a really poor start, and ultimately that's where the game starts and finishes for me. The Bulldogs went out to a 16-0 deficit, and when you're conceding 3 tries against a side that struggles to score points in the Bulldogs, then it's going to be very difficult for you to succumb any sort of comeback. The game started with a really good tussle between the two sides. It was very competitive, it was very backward and forward, not too many 6-agains, not too many penalties, just 2 sides going at it. And that was really great to see as a product. But then Matt Burton throws a really poor pass to Bronson Xerri, and there was just a compound of errors here. First, the poor pass. Then, Bronson Xerri drops his head and doesn't think to pick up the ball. Coach killer. The Tigers pick up the ball, run downfield, and on the very next play, the Tigers spread the ball from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, and Jarrell Skelton goes over. Former Bulldog, by the way. The second try, again, so avoidable. Rinakama running back on the last tackle, and that's just really poor wing play. He didn't drop, and then him and Jacob Kiraz not necessarily communicating very well. So then we end up with Rinakama going for like this half effort. Tavana attacks it, he gets over Rinakama and he scores. The Tigers then lead 12-0. Then Leo Thompson, really stupid penalty at this stage of the game. Pushes the player over after he plays the ball. It was always going to be a penalty. Then the Tigers get another set because on the last tackle they kicked the ball and it was deemed played at. But then great footy by the Tigers. This was a good try and probably the best try of the game. Madden to Luai to Pierce Paul, who offloads for Jareem Buller, who finishes off a really brilliant play. Well done, Tigers. You have to give that a round of applause. The Bulldogs then find themselves 16-0 down. But then, bit of spark. Touponuia was destructive, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But Kiraz does a nice tip on to Siliti Touponuia, who breaks a few tackles, gets an offload back to Jacob Kiraz, and the Lebanese international had a lot to do, but boy, he got it all done. He shakes the tackle off, gets a full-grown man on his back, shakes him off, then he puts a brilliant bit of footwork on Jareem Buller, and he manages to run away and finish the try. Great job, Jacob Kiraz. Good fullback play as well, to be alert and supporting the play, and then he was there to benefit from the offload. Great work from Jacob. Try converted, 16-6. Then we go into the second half. The Bulldogs had a good share of possession early. Unfortunately, the attack was directionless. How many times have we said that this season? Between Lachlan Gavin and Matt Burton, once again, we're reverting back to 2 players who just are not opting to take control and are probably not capable of it either. The play ended with Lachlan Galvin kicking the ball dead from Parramatta all the way to St. Mary's. But then, again, Siliti Touponuia, a little bit of brilliance. Individual brilliance, makes a great run, gets a nice offload over to Inari Tawala, who finishes off the attack. Well done, Inari. Bulldogs are now on the comeback trail and get themselves out 20-10. Of course, throughout the game, we thought Stephen Crichton went over, but he was held up. You got to hold the ball in the arm closest to the sideline. He held it in that left hand, held up. Super unfortunate, but it just wasn't a B. Then you get the most controversial part of the game. Josh Curran, brilliant charge down. Not too dissimilar to what Jack Underhill did last week. Puts pressure on the kicker, gets the ball, runs away, scores the try. Bulldogs about to even things up, or so we thought. The referee rules that Josh Curran attacked the legs of the player. An absolute farce of a decision. Refereeing just going over and above, over officiating, penalising for what could have been, not for what has happened. He didn't attack the legs. He didn't put Jerome Luai in danger. He simply attacked the ball. You're just killing the charge down. The officials and the executives of the National Rugby League are killing the fundamental product of rugby league. This is why I blew up about the send-off during State of Origin. A send-off was designed for malicious intent. Now, if you can't prove malicious intent, you can't say it's a send-off. This is the same principle. If he didn't fucking attack his legs,
then what the hell is the penalty for? If we're going to penalise on hypotheticals, then we might as well not tackle, because every tackle may be deemed high. I digress. It's pulled back, no try, but then the Bulldogs showed some mental fragility here, because on the very next play, a 6 again call, and Jarrell Skelton scores his second, gets the Tigers out to 22-10, and at that point the game was pretty much over. A little bit of brilliance from Lachlan Galvin. Again, the attack was really struggling back in the Tigers' red zone area, but Lachlan Galvin goes to dummy half. I was actually yelling at the screen saying, why is he at dummy half? But credit to him, he goes over, scores a try, and he silences the Tigers, if not just for a moment, to put all those boos to bed. Good play, Lachlan Galvin. It's converted by Stephen Crichton. 16-22, the Bulldogs go down to the West Tigers. Now, overall, I can't fault the Bulldogs' effort. If you look at the statistics, I think the Bulldogs were the better side. They had more line breaks, they had more offloads, they made more meters. All of those things being equal, the Bulldogs absolutely were right in the game. They tried really hard as well. I can't fault their effort. And Cameron Ciraldo said as much in his press conference, but where Cameron's getting it wrong, and what he's not highlighting, is that the Bulldogs' attack is directionless. We lack a sharpness when we attack. It's very clear to me that this side just really struggles to understand at which point they want to get to in the field, and then what they're going to do on the following play. And again, this comes back to game management. And this is why you can't read too much into the Melbourne Storm performance. Like Matt Burton, as brilliant as he was against the Melbourne Storm, mate, it was an obliterated side. They were missing so many players. You see him today, he starts the game off with a poor pass to Bronson Xerri. Don't let one game influence your decision-making about players or this team. Ultimately, you have to look at what's been the most consistent product of what we've seen this season. And the most consistent number I can give you is 4 wins and 8 losses. This Bulldog side is not making the finals. And it is this Frankenstein of a squad that was put together by the decision-makers that has ultimately led to this decision. It is this Frankenstein of a squad put together by the coach and the executives that has led to this dreadful 2026 season that we're experiencing. And unfortunately, there's no quick way out of this. But let's be a little bit positive. Siliti Touponuia, 15 runs, 117 meters, 3 line breaks, unbelievable, 2 try assists, 5 tackle busts, 2 offloads. A complete back row performance. The Bulldogs are missing Viliami Kikau and Jacob Preston. Not going to deny that, of course, that would impact the threats on the edges. But Siliti Touponuia just made you forget about those 2 players for just today, because he was absolutely destructive on that right-hand edge. I can't tell you what changes to make, because ultimately I think we're stuck with the group of players we have. I'd love to see Mitchell Woods get a run in first grade before the season ends. But it's ultimately going to be down to his fitness. He needs to get 1 or 2 games in New South Wales Cup and perform to a certain level in order to achieve that first grade debut, and that's ultimately going to be up to him. I do want to talk about Stephen Crichton. Now, he's had a poor season. I think it's fair to say that. And he is the Bulldogs captain, and I acknowledge that. His level of performance is concerning. And I'm not going to write him off, because you can't write off champion players. And he will come back from this. I have no doubt about that. But I think there needs to be a little bit of thought into what this season has meant for Stephen Crichton as a captain. He himself as a player has never experienced this. He came through a very successful Penrith team and is now leading the Bulldogs. Since being at the Bulldogs, we have qualified for the finals. We came 7th and 3rd. So this is a new experience for what I would say is still a fairly young player. I think he's 24 years of age, Stephen Crichton. And he's never been part of a side struggling for confidence, struggling in terms of losses. So this is a really steep learning experience for him. And I think that he will come out better for this as well. But I feel a little bit sorry for him in this regard, because I think that he's not necessarily being supported by the players around him to get this team where it needs to be. And again, I want to highlight that I think these group of players are trying hard, but ultimately the balance of the squad is just wrong. We got the Parramatta Eels on the King's birthday. Now, this is a huge game. Season defining. The Bulldogs, it's must win. It's as simple as that. I would love to see Stephen Crichton deployed at fullback. I know Jacob Kiraz played really well. And again, I'm not criticizing Jacob for his performance, but I just think Crichton could give us something a little bit different. I think he gives us something a little bit more well-rounded. I think he's got a bit of a pass in him. I think he's got an offload in him, and it'll just give him a little bit more freedom to get his hands on the ball a little bit more. I'd be happy for Jacob to then revert to right centre or even on the wing. I mean, I don't think you lose anything. No matter where Jacob plays, he's effective. He's got a brilliant offload. He runs hard. So all really positive signs
for Jacob Kiraz. But outside of that, like I said, there's just not too much we can do. I think the hookup position is obviously problematic. The fullback position, we need to buy someone to fill those shoes ultimately. And then you've got the Matt Burton, Lachlan Galvin debate, which isn't going away anytime soon. The immediate answer, you'd want to say give Mitchell Woods an opportunity, but even then, there's no guarantees that he takes it. So you have to hope that he does. But the Bulldogs spine needs a lot of investment and it needs a lot of change. And unfortunately, that's not something that's going to be solved this year, and it might not even be solved next year. But there you have it. There's my reaction to the Tigers game. Let's get optimistic. Let's get behind the boys for the Parramatta Eels game. Enjoy your rugby league for the weekend and get out of here.